This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Pruitt.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, and I am your host, Kevin Pruitt. I've got a very special guest with me today who is the co-founder and head of operations at Intelligent Relations. Our guest today is also actively involved in all aspects of operations and growth for the company. This ranges from the generation of the AI PR technology for the platform all the way across to client services. This is a very short bio, and there is so much more to learn about our guest today, Steve Marcinuk. Steve, thanks for joining us on the Marketing Umbrella Podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Happy to connect.
So, man, we got to chat for a bit last week, but you said so many interesting things that I said we've got to do an encore here. So, let's just dive in, round out the foundation of the bio a little bit, family, where you live. Let's just let the audience know you a little better.
Yeah, for sure. My pleasure. So as you mentioned, co-founder at Intelligent Relations, we are focused on using AI to accelerate and enhance public relations. Public relations is broadly under that marketing umbrella, so to speak. So yeah, really happy to hear.
No pun intended.
Pun totally intended to be here and connect with your audience. And yeah, last time we were talking about AI and what we were doing in the startup side. Here, just really thought this would be an opportunity to do a deep dive into AI and marketing. And so, yeah, my background is originally in marketing before I made that pivot over to public relations. So totally love everything about market positioning, understanding how to tell the story of a company, and had kind of a background in social media marketing and paid advertising and content marketing back when I started my last agency, Net Positive Agency. And Intelligent Relations, we've been around for 3 years, and really took all the learnings we did there and rolled them up into what we're doing at Intelligent Relations. And so personally, where I'm at, born and raised in Connecticut, went to school in Philly, and about 7 years ago, I outsourced myself down here to Northern South America. It's a little blown out here, but those are the Andes Mountains behind me. I'm here in Medellin, Colombia, and it's where my wife is from. So I got a big extended Colombian family down here, and my family visits frequently enough as well.
Well, I love the idea that, you're not one that's just going to talk about the discipline. You actually were a practitioner, in the marketing space, in the marketing agency space. So yeah, talk about your pivot from that to PR. Is it more of a refinement than a pivot?
Yeah, I mean, marketing is trying to connect the right audience with the right message on the right platform at the right time. And I saw that I partnered with a good friend of mine who had more experience in the PR space. And we just saw that using my more like technical analytical skill set and his foundational knowledge in public relations, there was a real opportunity here. Specifically, we're seeing that, legacy PR agencies, those are bigger companies that are charging $10,000, $20,000 a month retainers to maybe more to the enterprise space. And there was this whole swath of business that I was frankly focused on: seed companies, Series A companies, like more early stage companies that maybe were priced out. They were hiring us for regular marketing services, but they were priced out of traditional PR. So we saw some opportunities to leverage technology, to leverage, clean execution, to focus on a market that was really underserved with a solution that seemed to fit well.
So the gap existed in the market really at the client level that you were kind of aiming at. But you said one interestingly key word there. You said, Series A startups. You didn't say the early stage startups because they don't have any money.
Well, that's another part of the market. And I think that for PR specifically, listen, everyone has a story to tell. The main media publications that were mostly focused on Intelligent Relations, niche media, mainstream media, et cetera. A lot of those folks, they're looking to talk to companies that have a little bit more traction, have a little bit more, they're a little bit more established in their place. And if you pitch, true mom and pop kind of businesses, it's tough to get those
Yeah.
kind of folks featured in TechCrunch. So you got to have a little bit of credibility to get into some of those publications, and that really, we saw that as a nice sweet spot. Got some traction, getting, has a little bit of funding behind you, or a little bit of revenue coming in, stories that the media is hungry for, and if we can help to connect those dots at a price point that resonates, we got a win-win.
You mentioned earlier about your time in a marketing agency leading that. So talk about some of the challenges that you experienced in that space that you think would be germane to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my agency, it's coming on like 8, 9 years ago now. Net Positive was the previous one. And I got into that probably in a way that a lot of folks, become agency owners, which is I was doing marketing. I was in-house. I learned some skills that were helpful. I was thinking, I would love to have a bigger impact. I can do this for more companies, so I can take this skill set and I'm going to start a business around my skill set. And that it's organic, it makes sense. I think it was a good move for me professionally, but man, did I get slapped in the face a little bit in those early years, realizing that like, oh yeah, running an agency is a heck of a lot more than just doing the thing. You gotta hunt clients, you got to package services, you got to do your own marketing and sales, you got to do the bookkeeping. I had a professor back in college who's the accounting professor, and he's like, you may not like it now, but one day you will look back and think that accounting was the most important class you didn't pay attention to. And I was like, I remembered that lesson over and over again.
Came back to bite me. That's right.
Yeah, I paid some attention, but I had to relearn a lot of those lessons. So yeah, I think the earliest stage was just recognizing that running a business, running an agency is so different from doing marketing, and all the skills that had to be learned along with that.
The picture you just painted is one of, moving from just a cog in the wheel to like trying to keep the wheel spinning. So when some of the other things you learned, that were really practical. I mean, you really talk about kind of the way you think mechanically and systematically. Did you put systems in place that kind of made this work, made this machine keep turning versus just, kind of flying by the seat of your pants, so to speak?
Absolutely. So I think that where I started to get some traction with the early agency was when I broke free of the sell service cycle. So I think this is something that is probably, again, very common, is small shops got to go out, get the clients. You got to close the deals with the clients, negotiate the right arrangements, etc. And if you're a smaller operation, that takes key resources, your time, key team members' time, etc. You go out, you sell, you bring in the business. Then you got to shift focus to delivering for those clients, and it's hard to keep a full eye on both those balls until you really systematize both the selling and the servicing. And that was, figuring out both of those systems was when I started to break free from that cycle. Because of course, hopefully you do a great job. It's a fixed length engagement, or client churns eventually, and then you realize like I got to go out and sell again, and that's just that'll burn someone out pretty quickly. So on the sales side, I'm happy to go into details around how we did it, but building a system to bring in predictable leads, predictable sales calls, demos. For us, it was a combination of cold email outreach and demo calls in that way. We used a little bit of paid ads and remarketing, but it's really just building the top of funnel was step one. And once we kind of got that and then figured out that sales pipeline, that was a blessing. And then the other part, and I'm happy to go into more detail if that's of interest to the audience. And the other part was helping to define our offerings. And I think this took me longer than it should have to figure out, but defining what we do for whom and doing that consistently really made a difference. Because, especially when you're early and hungry, like we would do anything for anybody. This is going back a while now, but I remember those days painfully. Like, sure, you want us to do this thing, and I know how to, but that doesn't scale. The fact that I know how to doesn't scale. And I also, in hindsight, I see that 70-80% of the problems that I faced as agency owner were when we were trying to do things that were either out of scope or like that, or when there was a problem that arose in client services that, because the team had made a mistake or something. And both of those really come down to, we try to do something that only I knew how to do. It wasn't structured down. And so that just tore me back and forth, frontline sales, services in, and it, setting up the systems and defining what we do for whom and putting process to that really was the break free moment for me.
I love that. I'm gonna get a t-shirt that says I know how to doesn't scale. I mean, that is a bumper sticker. That is a one-line political slogan right there. And it is so true. And the kind of the formula that you introduced, like what do you do for whom? This it's the same thing. It has such universal application. I mean, I've even seen people talk about your LinkedIn profile headline needs to say, I am this, I do this for this, for this audience or whatever. Just very clean, very clear. And it's all about, niching down to your ideal client and being really clear on your offering at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And well, once you have a focus, then you can get really good at that focus. And when you get clients, you start to get combination of reputation and experience in that industry, so that when a prospect comes your way, you can close them with a high degree of certainty because that's what you do. And this is what we do better than anybody else. So that really helped. I mean, that's, frankly, I learned that lesson at Net Positive and coming over to Intelligent Relations that, and starting to build this. We had a market in mind pretty much from day one. We knew what we were trying to do. It was trying to help win media coverage for early stage startups. Like, that's a much better place to start than we can do marketing. I can do marketing for folks.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. I don't want to revisit
that's just much. A little too broad. That's you're a master of none if that's where you are. But I literally just crossed my mind this idea of, and I want to transition here to really kind of focus on something we really wanted to drill down in this chat was around the whole idea of AI, but the thought that came through my mind is AI like the COVID of marketing? It just like, it seems like it came out of nowhere and it affected
depends
everybody.
From what perspective,
so it's, is it the benign, is it the neutral COVID of marketing that, in 2019, you're hearing rumblings, and then early 2020, the world shuts down, so give us the 50,000 foot view, and then let's drill down on the kind of the practical applications.
For sure. Well, it's going viral, and it's taking over the news cycles. Those things seem to be true, and hopefully benign. But there's debate. Right. There's no antidote. We're not going back. So, yeah, back 2020, my co-founders and I were just started to pay more attention to this generative AI. There were early indications that this technology was growing. It would accelerate rapidly, and that come, a few years from then, i.e., 2022, 2023, the technology would actually be to the point where it could have a transformative impact on a wide variety of technologies. So we kind of set out to build our platform with that in mind, so that we would build kind of the frameworks and then be kind of model agnostic, like whether that's OpenAI or whether that's something out of Google or whatever, we'd be able to kind of plug in and modify the models that were needed as they improved. So I think that in terms of it sneaking up and having this profound impact, we saw this starting in 2022. These models started to get traction. There was GPT-3, there was ChatGPT, GPT 3.5. I mean, we were literally in the process of building models for, GPT 3.5, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, 4 is here, like have at it.
Exactly.
And then it does seem like every week, every 2 weeks, there's a new totally killer feature. And all of this is really built upon these large language models, which essentially are able to process information in a way that previously was impossible, because it's just sucked up all the words, all the data of all, from billions and billions of data points, articles, content, things like that, and analyze those in a way where basically it can start to predict what makes sense to follow up. And that can have the impression of problem solving. It can have the impression of being creative, things like that. And so these predictive models are really reaching far and wide. And it does seem, it can seem certainly like it was overnight, but working what we do today was not possible 2 years ago because the latest and greatest models then just were not there. And our platform and our products took giant leaps forward once the models were like, oh yeah, that thing that we had to find all these workarounds to, now it's a straight line because the models are just good enough to do what we imagined they might be able to.
Is it 2 years
Yeah.
or even like 6 months? I mean, 3 months, it seems like that it seems like that learning
Yeah.
curve that, what's the principle that says like data storage or RAM, doubles every 18 months or something like that. It's a similar, like Moore's
Yeah.
law, maybe.
Yep.
It's similar that it is almost like, the rapidity of the change is just incredible, or the
Yeah.
quantum, I guess, exponential change that happens
Mhm.
is amazing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think what we're seeing here that's interesting, from my perspective, is that it, already and certainly in the near future, AI generated content will be a part of just about everything we consume. And that's when you take it a holistic view. So whether that's the autocomplete of the email, where you're starting to write an email and then Google or Gmail autocompletes and suggests the end of the sentence. How have you been? For example, it knows that, all the way through to writing essays or blog posts or things like that. We're going to see that this AI content is far-reaching. That and what is unknown is how people will react to that, how people will feel about
mhm.
AI being used in different contexts. Um, it's certainly here, it's certainly coming, and it's unclear what context we feel good about that and what context we feel bad about it being used.
So I follow up on that. I mean, good context, bad context. What's the right and wrong use of AI, especially
Yeah.
in this space?
Well, I imagine many folks who are in the marketing field are, by nature, innovative people, explorative. I'm guessing there's a lot of people here. If you're building an agency, you're probably looking for the latest and greatest tools, and it is a question of, how do I use this stuff? In terms of generative text, our internal rule is like you have to look at the stakes and the scope. So if you're going to use AI language, if the stakes are very high, like this is going to be in a press release that reaches tens of thousands of people, you're going to want to be a little bit more careful, i.e. human oversight. And if the scope of the text is important, then you're going to want to pay more attention as well. So like a long form document that you're using in-house, not a lot of people are seeing it. It can have some slight hallucinations or slight errors. That's kind of fine. So internal processing, documentation things, just like prepping notes for an interview, prepping client calls, research on, summarizing documents, not original research because it'll hallucinate facts and figures,
Mhm.
but like anything internal, great. And then it also does better with short form rather than long form content. So the longer it gets, the more likely it's going to go kind of off the wheels. So I'd say it's originally we thought that AI was going to automate. And what we're really seeing is that AI is good for two things. It's good for automating simple tasks, simple repetitive tasks, and it's good for human assistance. And so long as you're trying to keep it in that scope, automate simple stuff, and then assist your team to do things that maybe they couldn't do before, like certain kinds of writing ad copy because it's using a model, an out-of-the-box model that's been trained to do that, or writing a sales email as a draft or a marketing email as a draft and having them punch it up. You're kind of good. Just don't expect it to do everything perfectly out of the box in long form. It's probably obvious, but like that's where things go off the wheels.
I love the way you kind of just distilled it down into the two basic benefits of AI. And so what do you see, in the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever? What's the short-term future of AI? And then maybe, prognosticate a little bit, Mr. Futurist. I mean, what does it look like 5 years down the road?
Yeah, for sure. So uh, we'll see a cultural evaluation of AI where there'll be kind of a shaking out.
Mhm.
There's gonna be transparency. first of all, transparency is coming. We have a little bit of a fun arms race happening where you have AI generated content and AI generated content detectors. The content detectors are not amazing just yet, but they're going to get it. So basically, you train AI models by taking a ton of original data and putting them through there, and then you train the AI content detectors by taking a lot of AI content and putting it through the content detector, and it tries to map to see like, oh, this looks like it was created by a model, and it's going to become an arms race. But eventually, my assumption is that it will become transparent at some point when your content was created by an AI generator. So, for example, we do SEO. Is part of our own internal SEO on our blog, and we're creating long-form content. We use AI to support that, but I'm actually running all of our blogs through AI content detectors, and I'm also giving very careful instructions to my team to like make sure this is human, because someday, probably sooner than later, Google's going to start running and evaluating like what content is human and not, and they're going to start penalizing this stuff. I would imagine that's coming in everything from SEO purposes to sales emails, where you're going to very soon be able to detect, like, you'll know. So I think that's very good. I would encourage everyone in the audience to assume what you're doing will be known as AI at some point, and to operate under that principle. You're not going to run awry by doing that. Legislation also almost certainly coming. We're seeing that in some areas already. Laws around AI usage will become clear. And I'm a big fan of innovation, but I think there's certain cases where we would say that we don't want AI to be used. Actual in the writing of legislation or in doctors' prescriptions or something like that. Human resources is a case. Surgery. I would be concerned about human resources. So we ran a test a couple months ago, just asking the model to write a fictitious description of write a poem about a fictitious engineer, and write a fictitious poem about an administrative assistant. And based on what it had absorbed, it determined that the engineer was male and very intelligent, and it didn't mention anything about his family or anything else. Meanwhile, the administrative assistant was a stressed out mother of 3. It described her looks, her glasses, and all this other stuff. Okay, probably learned that from us by just, to make stereotypes. But think of it, if you apply models that are flawed and have bias towards applications that have deep human impact, like who's more qualified for this job, and somehow it's built into the model to make certain assumptions, that's risky. So legislation is coming, transparency in legislation, and we kind of already talked about how it's like the widespread nature of how it's going to kind of infiltrate every aspect of the content we're consuming. I think that's the next 6 months.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree that that is the kind of the next, even in a shorter term, the next 2 steps that are going to have a big impact. But if you were wanting to kind of tie a bow around this and say, okay, really speaking to agency owners, which is predominantly our audience on this podcast here, but what is one thing about AI in their space that we really haven't touched on that you think would be really helpful for them to be cognizant of, as this, use cases increase, exponentially. And I also want you to mention, like, is there a specific content kind of detector that you use, or content evaluator that you use, a tool that might be helpful to them?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say for agency owners who are looking to adopt AI in their process, I'd say adopt a hacker's mindset and just dive in and play. A lot of these tools they're called playgrounds, so you can get into OpenAI, you can pay a very modest amount of money and have access to those playgrounds, and you can start to develop, just workflows that you could then pass to your team. So we built simple, besides building true tech workflows, we built simple recipes. There's a new tool in ChatGPT, which is their code interpreter tool. game changer, totally cool. What it can do is it can analyze using Python. It can analyze and interact with documents. So we're uploading, for example, a giant list of articles, and then I can ask, as a CSV, as a comma separated files Excel file, and we're asking it to remove articles that are in the United Kingdom, remove articles that are in this and this and this. And so just like this is no code programming.
Right.
You're able to give and so we've given little recipes to one of my analysts and saying, hey, here's line number 1, copy, paste, use that. Here's line number 2, line number 3. And so that's a workflow. And so just you're not going to know how to use the tools if you're not playing first. I always say that, the most senior person should hack away and understand what the outcome is, what good looks like. And then once you know it well enough, then try delegating it to someone else. But that you can start to automate and streamline workflows very quickly by diving in and breaking them down and then handing them off to somebody else.
Great idea.
Just rinse, wash, repeat.
It's a great idea. And specific tools that you would mention that might be helpful?
Yeah, we use I use Winston AI. That is an AI content detector. It gives probabilities around how likely certain content is to be written by AI. I've gotten pushback from some of my writers who say, I totally wrote that sentence. I don't know what you're talking about. So I think it's imperfect tech, but they seem to be doing it in a smart way. And so I would strongly consider them as a tool to use. And you could also just Google competitors to those guys or other AI content detector tools. The tools that I find most user friendly for folks who want to hack away, we use OpenAI for a lot of our text generation style models. We also use Google's Palm 2, but their user interface is trickier. If you're willing to play with it, check out Google's sandbox playgrounds for that. But they have a similar kind of interface if you just hunt through enough to get to it. But generally, we see that OpenAI's interface for the purpose is as good or better. And just a distinction that might not be obvious to all folks, OpenAI makes their technology available in 2 forms. They have ChatGPT, which is available in ChatGPT Plus for, I think it's like $20 a month. It's worth it for sure for the I think it's unlimited credits. It's very affordable for that. And that's just chatbot, back and forth, etc. The real power and fun comes in their OpenAI sign up. And again, you can sign up for that. You can log in. They have this whole robust playground. You can essentially train your own chat bots. You can give it system prompts. It's a much more power user approach. And if you're inclined to that, I would totally encourage folks to play with both.
I got one other question.
Yeah,
everything you mentioned is just generating more thoughts that I want to follow up on. But and forgive me for showing my ignorance in this space, but is there a way, like if you mentioned, training your chatbots, whatever, is there a way to limit the input on the AI side to say, I only want you to look at this stream, I only want you to look at this content, I only want you to look at this, or consider, I guess limiting the box that it's looking at versus just scan the internet,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So it kind of comes down to limiting the scope and or the creativity of the models. So most of the models, Palm out of Google, OpenAI's, GPT, every example, they have a throttle, which is the temperature model, and it's basically saying how creative do you want it to be. That's and so you can have it go less creative or more creative based on that. Again, that's not ChatGPT, but that can help you to throttle it down.
Yeah.
A brief technical description of that is these are probabilistic models trying to anticipate what the next word should be. I hope you're having a great day is the most likely one.
Right.
If you increase the temperature, that means it could go from I hope you have a nice day to coffee break to koala bear. Like, it's like technically
Exactly,
maybe.
yeah.
I hope you have a nice.
Yeah.
So it
Have a
goes
great
down.
koala
So
bear this weekend.
so it gets more creative and you can control that. That's a little bit different from what you're asking, but it's important that folks know
Yeah.
that yes, you can control that, and that can cut down on what are known as hallucinations, where basically it just makes stuff up to try to to try to complete because it's probabilistically possible but not likely. That's part one. Part two is that in these models you can seed it with information. So I will, for example,
Yeah, that's
workflow
what
I
I was looking at.
use. Yeah, so I'll record a call using Otter or whatever other tools there are to do call transcripts, and I will upload that text. So I will do a multi-prompt interaction in OpenAI. I'll say, here's a call transcript with a client, dump in the text, then ask, what are 5 key takeaways from this call that I have to do? How did the client feel about this thing? So I will go back and kind of query my own text in that way in order to get better responses. And then the last thing is that there's a new there's a new field that I'm looking at. So I just got an email literally today from AI21, which is another, they like Jurassic models. It's another large language model. But they basically have a tool where you can upload a ton of documents and use AI to essentially have a chatbot that just queries that body of documents. I'm super excited to check that out. I see a lot of applications for it. But like, for example, here, practical use case, I'm thinking of taking all my client notes and just dumping them into a repository and then having a model available where my team can go in and be like, hey, how does XYZ company feel about this? And it'll either say no information on that, or it'll give you factual information based on what's in the repository. So that's the last trend. If you look like forward, that I'm really, this is the last trend I can comment on right now that I'm really excited about, is integrating these kinds of large language models into workflows that help even non-technical folks more and more. The ability to create a chatbot that queries a database that you're setting up with no coding experience required, that's pretty cool. So it's all out there. Just dive in and start hacking around, and your workflow is better than anyone else. Start thinking. And usually these guys have, some of the companies have like chat support, there's forums, just like, just dive in and have fun.
And like you said, I mean, a lot of agency owners are creative, and not only creative in content creation, but also creative in finding solutions to issues that they're facing. But this is a rabbit hole. This is an endless rabbit hole that we could chase down. But I'm going to discipline myself to kind of rein it in right now, and let you get back to work here in a few minutes. But this is where we shift in the conversation, and I start asking you just rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind, real quick, short answers. You're going to go, this makes no sense. I don't know why this is related to what we were talking about, but there is a method to the madness here. So buckle up. Here we go. So did you get along with your parents growing up?
We had a tumultuous relationship. We now get along much better that I live out of the country and we meet on neutral territory.
Do you have siblings?
No.
Pet or pets?
No.
Kids?
I have a son, Benjamin, and another one on the way.
Congratulations. What time do you wake up in the morning?
4 a.m.
And what time do you normally go to bed?
9 a.m. on the dot. 9 p.m. on the dot.
Ideal vacation spot, money not an object.
These days, a resort at an island, because everyone can just hang out and relax, and someone else takes care of all the logistics. These days, that's the move.
How does faith affect your work?
Deeply, actually. I'm a Jewish person. I studied a bit in yeshiva. I haven't worked on a Shabbat in 15 years.
If you were king for a day, what's one thing you would change about the marketing space that you think would improve it universally?
Transparency into operations. I think most agencies don't provide enough transparency in what they're doing. It creates an adversarial relationship. Transparency should be required.
And boy, nothing could be more applicable today with the advent of AI and it's the scary side of lack of transparency sometimes. But I man, I love this conversation. I love the things that you've shared with us today, and it literally could have gone on for hours to just continue to pick your brain, and we may have to schedule another, like a 2.0 version, just to get the backside. And it changes so often, the conversation would be completely different if we chatted again, for sure.
I think that's true.
But Steve, thank you again for just taking time today and just sharing your thoughts. And the best place to contact you is
intelligentrelations.com. Love to connect with you all if you just want to brainstorm AI kind of things, or a lot of folks don't do PR. We have a partner program where sometimes we're looped into the engagements to provide PR services for folks. If you want to chat about that, we're happy to connect on that too.
Steve, thank you again. Have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to connecting soon.
Cool. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.